In 1453, a 21-year-old sultan stands outside the walls of Constantinople, the most fortified city in the world, protected by triple walls that have held for 1,000 years, defended by the greatest empire in Christian history. Every general before him failed attempting this siege. Every army before his was destroyed trying. He takes it in 53 days. But here is what makes this truly extraordinary. Taking Constantinople is not the achievement. What Mehmed II does after taking it reveals the strategic genius that will build an empire lasting 600 years, controlling 3 continents, generating wealth that makes European kingdoms look like provincial towns, surviving the collapse of every rival empire around it. And he does it in exactly 3 steps. 3 strategic principles so brilliantly executed that historians still study them today. 3 steps that explain not just Ottoman success but the fundamental mechanics of how any empire achieves and maintains dominance across centuries. But the 3rd step will genuinely shock you, because it reveals something about Ottoman strategy that seems completely insane at first, something that should have destroyed the empire from within, something that every modern geopolitical analyst recognizes operating in today's world but nobody wants to say out loud directly. This is the story of how the Ottoman Empire controlled 3 continents for 600 years, not through luck, not through overwhelming military force alone, through 3 steps of strategic brilliance that turned geography, human psychology, and deliberate manufactured instability into the most durable empire in human history. But before the 3 steps, we need to understand the one insight the Ottomans possessed that every rival empire completely missed. Because without this insight, none of the 3 steps make any sense. And with it, the entire 600-year story becomes inevitable rather than miraculous. The insight is this: every empire before the Ottomans measured power in territory, in populations controlled, in armies fielded, in gold extracted from conquered lands. They thought about power as something you accumulate by taking things from other people. The bigger the territory, the greater the power, the larger the army, the stronger the empire. The Ottomans measured power differently. They measured it in flows, not in what you possess but in what passes through you, not in what you own but in what you control the movement of. This single difference in how they understood power explains everything that follows. Every military decision, every diplomatic maneuver, every seemingly strange strategic choice across 6 centuries of imperial history. Geography is not just terrain, geography is money. Every empire before the Ottomans thought about geography in military terms: mountains to cross, rivers to bridge, deserts to survive, territory to conquer and hold, populations to tax into submission. They measured geographic value in agricultural productivity and defensible positions. The Ottomans asked a completely different question, not what can we conquer here, but where does all the money flow through here? The answer in 1300 AD is unmistakable to anyone willing to look. Between East and West, between Asia's silk, spices, cotton, and luxury goods and Europe's desperate, insatiable appetite for them. Every merchant caravan crossing from China toward Venice, every spice ship navigating from India toward Mediterranean markets, every bolt of Chinese silk destined for a European nobleman's palace. All of it moves through one geographic zone, the narrow corridor connecting the Black Sea, Mediterranean, and Persian Gulf. The physical choke point where 3 continents meet and where mountains, seas, and rivers force all traffic into predictable, controllable passages. The Ottomans are born in Anatolia, sitting directly on top of this choke point. The founding sultans deliberately expand toward trade route intersections rather than simply toward fertile agricultural land. Other kingdoms want farms, the Ottomans want the roads between the farms. Because whoever controls the road controls the toll, and the toll on global trade between Asia and Europe generates more wealth than any agricultural territory ever could. Farms produce once per season, trade routes produce every single day, forever. This is the foundation of Ottoman economic thinking. Before conquering anything, understand what that conquest controls economically. Every military decision is simultaneously a financial decision. Step 1. Control every choke point between East and West. Mehmed II does not simply take Constantinople. He takes the most important geographic position in the known world. Constantinople sits at the Bosphorus Strait, the only water passage between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. Every ship moving between these 2 bodies of water must pass through this narrow channel. This is not a city. This is the most valuable toll booth on Earth. The Ottomans understand immediately what they have captured. Within years of taking Constantinople, they establish control over every major trade chokepoint connecting continents. The Bosphorus and Dardanelles Straits controlling Black Sea access, the eastern Mediterranean basin controlling Levantan trade, the Red Sea northern approaches controlling Indian Ocean commerce routing toward Europe, the overland routes through Anatolia connecting Persian and Central Asian trade to Mediterranean ports. Every path connecting Asian production to European consumption now passes through Ottoman-controlled territory. Every merchant moving silk from China to Venice pays Ottoman tariffs at multiple checkpoints. Every spice shipment from India generates Ottoman revenue. Every cotton bale from Egypt. Every grain shipment from Black Sea ports. The economics are staggering in their simplicity. The Ottomans do not produce the silk, do not grow the spices, do not mine the cotton. They simply position themselves between producer and consumer across 3 continents and collect fees for the privilege of passage. Istanbul becomes the wealthiest city in the world within decades of conquest, not because Ottomans manufacture anything exceptional, but because everything manufactured anywhere valuable must physically pass through their territory to reach its buyers. European powers are furious. Venice, Genoa, Portugal, Spain all attempt to break or bypass the Ottoman trade monopoly. All initially fail. The geographic reality is simply too powerful. There is no practical alternative route, until there suddenly is, but that comes much later. First, the Ottomans need soldiers to enforce this monopoly, and they are about to invent the most psychologically sophisticated military system anyone has ever conceived. Step 2, take your enemy's children, turn them into your most loyal soldiers. This is the step that disturbs Western historians most deeply. The step that appears on the surface as pure institutionalized cruelty but reveals itself under examination as strategic genius of a completely different order. The Devshirme system, the blood tax. Every several years, Ottoman officials travel through Christian-conquered provinces in the Balkans and Anatolia. They identify the strongest, most intelligent boys between ages 8 and 12. They remove these children from their families permanently, convert them to Islam, enroll them in the most comprehensive military and administrative education system in the empire. These children become Janissaries, the Ottoman elite military corps, the most feared disciplined fighting force in the medieval world. And here is what transforms this from cruelty into genius. These soldiers have no family estates to protect, no land inheritance to prioritize, no tribal chieftain whose loyalty competes with the sultan's claim, no local nobleman they owe more than they owe the empire that raised them. Their entire identity, social world, professional future, and personal meaning is the Ottoman military system and nothing else. They have nowhere to defect to. The empire is everything they are. Compare this to every European feudal army. Knights with family estates they protect before royal commands. Nobles whose loyalty depends entirely on continuous royal favors satisfying their specific demands. Mercenaries who switch allegiances the moment payment improves elsewhere. The Janissaries cannot switch, cannot defect meaningfully, cannot prioritize competing loyalties because no competing loyalties exist for them. Militarily, they are devastating across 2 centuries, trained from childhood in combined arms tactics, using firearms decades before European armies standardized them, maintaining discipline under pressure that breaks conventional armies. They win battles against numerically superior forces repeatedly because discipline multiplies effective combat power beyond raw numbers. Administratively, they are equally powerful and completely overlooked by most historians. Boys taken from Greek, Serbian, Bulgarian, Albanian communities grow up to govern those same communities. They speak the local languages fluently, understand the cultural practices, can administer with sensitivity that pure Ottoman Turkish administrators never achieve. The empire governs conquered populations partly through people those populations recognize as their own. But this system carries a flaw hidden deep within its design, a flaw that takes 2 full centuries to fully emerge, and when it emerges it threatens to destroy everything from inside the walls rather than outside them. The Janissaries begin as absolute servants, they end as kingmakers. The very qualities that make them perfect soldiers, their total dependence on the imperial system, their complete lack of outside loyalty, their absolute unity as a military caste, eventually transform into political power that no sultan can safely challenge. They realize collectively that they are the empire's only functioning enforcement mechanism, that without their cooperation nothing works. That sultans need them more than they need sultans. Once they understand this, the Devshirme system stops producing loyal soldiers. It starts producing a permanent political pressure group that installs and removes rulers based on financial arrangements. The weapon the empire built to make itself invincible turns slowly and completely into the weapon that makes the empire ungovernable. 200 years of perfect loyalty followed by 100 years of systematic institutional blackmail. Step 3, and what you are about to hear will genuinely shock you. Every successful empire in history pursues the same fundamental border objective: achieve stability, secure the frontiers, end the peripheral conflicts draining military resources. Stable borders mean lower military spending. Lower spending means more resources for internal development, trade infrastructure, and population growth. Peace at the borders is the reward for successful imperial expansion. The Ottomans look at this universal imperial wisdom and deliberately do the precise opposite. They keep their borders in a state of permanent managed instability, fund rival factions against each other in neighboring territories, provide weapons and money to rebellious groups inside enemy kingdoms, maintain carefully calibrated low-level conflicts along every frontier simultaneously, ensure that genuine lasting peace never arrives anywhere near Ottoman borders. Read that again. The most successful empire in the world deliberately manufactures the conflicts threatening its own borders. This appears suicidal. Why would any rational empire spend resources creating and sustaining threats against itself? Why maintain instability that requires expensive military responses? Why not simply achieve peace and redirect military budgets toward prosperity? Because the instability is not the problem, the instability is the product, and understanding this distinction separates ordinary strategic thinking from Ottoman genius. Permanent border threats justify maintaining the largest standing army in the region without political challenge. That army requires continuous funding that justifies aggressive tax collection from provinces. Tax collection requires administrative control over distant territories. Administrative control requires the janissary system producing loyal administrators and enforcers. The janissary system requires the Devshirme blood tax from conquered Christian populations, which requires maintaining those populations under Ottoman control, which requires military enforcement. The entire imperial system requires a permanent military justification to keep every component running. Remove the border threats and the justification for the machine disappears. The machine stops. The empire loses its enforcement mechanism. The choke points become undefendable. The revenue collapses. But there is a deeper strategic dimension even more shocking than self-justifying military spending. Manufactured border instability keeps every neighboring power permanently weak, distracted, and unable to organize serious challenges to Ottoman dominance. A Balkan kingdom suppressing internal rebellions cannot organize a military coalition against Constantinople. The Habsburg Empire managing Protestant uprisings in Germany cannot simultaneously launch a crusade against Istanbul. A Persian empire defending its eastern frontier against steppe incursions cannot challenge Ottoman control of the Persian Gulf trade routes. The Ottomans are not reacting to regional instability, they are engineering it, funding Protestant rebellions inside the Habsburg Empire to keep Vienna perpetually distracted, supporting Safavid Persia against Sunni rivals to prevent Persian unification. Then switching support to Sunni rivals against Safavids to prevent Safavid dominance, backing Crimean Tatars against early Russian expansion to protect Black Sea trade routes from Moscow's growing ambitions. Small investments in other people's conflicts prevent massive military coalitions from forming against Ottoman interests. Spend thousands manufacturing division among enemies and avoid spending millions defending against their unified power. This is economic warfare operating through diplomatic channels, using other kingdoms' internal contradictions as weapons. The Ottomans never need to defeat the full combined military power of Europe because Europe is never unified long enough to apply that power. And Europe is never unified partly because the Ottomans fund the divisions preventing unity. 600 years, 3 steps, one perpetual motion machine for imperial dominance. Until Vasco da Gama sails the wrong direction around Africa. In 1498, a Portuguese sailor reaches India by circumnavigating Africa entirely. The journey takes 2 years, it is extraordinarily dangerous. The costs are massive, several ships are lost, Dozens of sailors die from scurvy, storms, and violence. But it works. And the moment it works, everything the Ottomans built across 600 years begins its slow, irreversible collapse. Not immediately, not visibly at first. The Ottoman Empire continues functioning for another 4 centuries after da Gama's voyage. It does not fall in 1498, but the foundation crumbles in 1498. The visible collapse just takes time to catch up with the invisible structural failure. Da Gama does not attack a single Ottoman fortress, does not defeat a single janissary, does not capture a single Ottoman city, does not challenge Ottoman military power in any direct way whatsoever. He simply finds a different road to the same destination. And in finding that different road, he destroys the economic foundation of everything the Ottomans built across 600 years. Step 1 collapses because geography stops being a monopoly. The choke points still exist, but merchants stop using them because the ocean route is cheaper. The toll booth that generated limitless wealth becomes a toll booth on an abandoned road. Without Step 1's revenue stream, Step 2 becomes unaffordable at scale. The janissaries cannot be maintained, equipped, and paid without the trade revenue funding them. They begin demanding compensation the weakening treasury cannot provide. They begin deposing sultans who cannot pay adequately. They become the empire's greatest internal threat rather than its greatest military asset. Step 3's manufactured instability, previously a controlled strategic tool, becomes genuine uncontrollable chaos when the empire lacks the resources to manage it carefully. The conflicts the Ottomans deliberately ignited around their borders stop being useful distractions and start being actual threats the weakened military cannot suppress. The system, optimized for 6 centuries of specific geographic and economic conditions, has no adaptation mechanism for a world where oceans replace land routes. The machine breaks down not from external military defeat, but from the internal logic of its own design meeting conditions it was never designed to handle. Every major power in the modern world is running a version of the Ottoman 3 steps right now. The United States controls the modern equivalent of Ottoman geographic choke points. Dollar dominance means every significant international transaction must clear through American financial infrastructure regardless of which countries are trading. SWIFT controls global payment flows. American naval power physically controls critical maritime passages. The Strait of Hormuz carrying 30% of global oil. The South China Sea carrying $5 trillion in annual trade. These are the Bosphorus Straits of the 21st century. China is constructing the modern Ottoman trade route strategy at continental scale. The Belt and Road Initiative builds physical infrastructure connecting Asian production to global consumption through corridors China controls and finances. Ports in Sri Lanka, railways through Central Asia, digital networks across Africa. Same strategic logic as Ottoman choke point control, different technology, same economic objective. Russia deliberately maintains frozen conflicts along its entire periphery. Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, Transnistria. These are not accidental outcomes of Russian foreign policy. They are the Ottoman Step 3 executed with modern tools. Manufactured instability, keeping neighboring states too weak and distracted to integrate with Western institutions threatening Russian regional dominance. The 3 Ottoman steps are not medieval history. They are the operating architecture of modern geopolitical competition. Every major power intuitively or consciously follows the same logic. Control the economic choke points. Build loyal enforcement systems. Keep potential rivals divided through managed instability. And every major power faces the Ottoman vulnerability. The system, perfectly adapted to current conditions, becomes catastrophically fragile when conditions change faster than strategy can adapt. The Ottomans built 600 years of dominance on 3 steps of genuine strategic genius, then lost it to a single sailor finding a different road to India. The lesson is not that the strategy failed. The strategy worked magnificently for longer than most empires exist at all. The lesson is that no strategy survives geography changing permanently beneath it. No choke point monopoly survives forever. No loyalty system prevents the loyal from eventually developing their own interests. No manufactured instability remains controllable indefinitely. 3 steps built the empire. The inability to imagine a 4th step when the world changed ended it. Modern powers following Ottoman strategy should be paying very close attention to that final lesson. Because the sailor who finds the different road is already out there somewhere, moving through waters nobody is watching yet.